So you may have noticed a short bit of a song that I use in my intro. That's Last Carnival, the first song on Kepler's first album, Kep1er Going On. It's an interesting album because most listeners seem hyper aware of the context under which it was made, but that was under the guise of a false pretense that Kepler would disband shortly following this release. This has all of the hallmarks of a disbandment album, all of the undertones and frankly overtones of it representing the end. But it's not the end, at least not for the remaining members of Kepler, which I don't really want to talk about right now because it's very sad to lose members. We're here to analyze this album to capture its life of its own, which is actually rather complex. I've always liked Kepler's music, but I think this goes beyond their previous work. It's not just good, it's significant, the same way they are in the zeitgeist of project groups and the work they contribute. Last Carnival certainly packs a heavy punch for an intro song, naturally not taking up a whole lot of space. Starts with the implication the speaker is on a carousel, sort of parallel to the compass in a valediction forbidding warning. It roots itself in the universe as well as time, covering different planes, including the social and emotional, with a reference to you and me. By how things progress, you can't take this story away from them in the same way literature is always happening. They use a lot of similes, suggesting figurative connections last beyond literal ones. They invite the subject along, but they acknowledge the subject created the world at hand, or at least what it means to be a part of it. It sounds like bad faith, but the speaker seems to be embracing life as it is, even if it's not exactly what they want. They reference an unknown it as if the lyrics are searching for its meaning themselves. They touch on the figurative nature of roads, like in the theater of the absurd. The speaker identifies themselves and the subject, them being enjambed actors, and they continue to stuff lines as such, the light they identify given as much weight as them as people. The light is coming from above despite the night. They set the light alight, playing a godly role. The word last implies there is to be an ending, but the speaker pairs it with forever. This could imply things will never end, but it could also mean forever as an opportunity is still final on some level. It has everything to do with how you frame it in your mind. They give the game essence and they welcome becoming the other. Shooting Star is, of course, the title track here. Its beginning is rather onomatopoeic, also using interesting phrasing like the blasting of the emotion. They reference being drawn in, effectively drawing in the audience. They use imagery, similes, onomatopoeia, you name it. Their emotionality and figurative language is rather straightforward. There are several metonymies, certainly the word of the day, or at least this video. The beginning is closely associated with the ending they portray. Light is associated with the new day, and flowers are associated with nature and life. They reference a previous day as part of a simile, which isn't very clear, being personal to the subject's own experiences, without all of the elements of their emotionality having to be on the surface. This is a definite apostrophe that wants to bridge the gap between the speaker and the subject in an intimate way. They give the abstract drive as it glitters and again implicate the different meanings of an ending. This could end versus this is an ending. They utilize their bodies with force, risks taken with conviction. They describe a star that could be distant, but it feels more like they point it out in a childlike manner, perhaps because of the chorus consisting of sounds more than words. They say the stars are their stage, meaning they are upon them rather than being stars in what would again be a metonymic sense. They say they appear, unclear if in a magic way or referencing how they look, and they embody destiny, making it sound not quite as scary. And they do not rhyme best, instead reassuring themselves with another best and with again, again, and again. They use a simile as part of their command, which could mean make me burn or bring light to me, saying for you, we see the speaker has no conception of bad faith or the other. They also say they will embrace each other's flames fully, being intimate with each other's energy and deeper selves. They reference the you and I, specifically using I to suggest they have to act now, though they also take a bittersweet moment. They simultaneously put off the end and acknowledge it is imminent. They say they soar anew low in the verse, the end, and the visual beginning if you're gonna soar. There's a lot too curious. If you haven't yet, grab a drink if you need it, or a snack, or both. They start off rather coy, asking the subject to come a little closer, talking about something sweet and magic. They create almost an aesthetic appeal to the song. They use repetition, and it's not really an aphora but functions similarly, but the lyrics are still literally connected. And they continue with the common theme of endings while describing an almost new universe and representing what it means to be a new yourself. They start losing their self control, but everything is part of a system. They stack all night upon every night, and they continue with their star motif while rooting things in their lives as idols as well. They say this is my space versus like my space, indicative of how adapting is hard when you are constantly reminded of other things. They say I allow only you to stay versus I want you to stay, involving the emotionality beneath the surface. They say like this we're together, being together in a figurative sense. The metaphorical sky and their heart as a canvas for them to light up. Their dark universe is of autonomy in life. They have a dazzling, shining motif appearing more, and they want to show more, connected by potential. They extend the word curious out, making the word into something different while kind of making it more of the same. They say closer as they talk about a growing question, getting increasingly intimate even when the question itself is left unspoken. And they include the space motif, possibly doubling as an valediction forbidding morning illusion. They also need reassurance from someone who might have their own needs and their own right to be a separate entity, something Columbus, who they reference, did not respect about others. They also talk about their space, which definitely might have a different meaning after talking about Columbus, especially as they portray everything for the sake of the speaker. Delineation in the bridge gives it a lot of weight, and they say every day and night with every day written as an adjective, calling into question what their thoughts truly represent. And because their thoughts themselves are like music, there's no need to abide by structure or conventions. These enjambment to push their curiosity forward, and they refer to the favorite color, portraying a certain singularity and devotion. They ask to be taught and convey their question and the answer, the love described rearing its head. And saying, like the Dark Knight, you are truly curious reminds me of when Ray Bradbury calls October a rare month for boys and something wicked this way comes. Flowers, Flutter, Your Heart. I'm obsessed with that title. It's so beautiful. It starts with this common butterfly metaphor they immediately try to flesh out, adding dimension with languid diction. They apply absurd rules to a figurative reaction and notice the manner of flying, something we usually just focus on the act of. There's a line about all the blue sky being yours, reminding me of Reached by Ali Condi, where everything blue is Indies. And they encompass their situation in a very simple way. Their chemistry is personified, given softness rather than intensity. And when they say the title, it's very lyrical with separation in commas, giving pause as well as conveying a unique thesis. It's definitely interesting that the heart is not capitalized in the song or in the title. It's as if they are a flower with the power of flight, but are just showing a fairy tale when they are a fairy tale. The heart is the real fairy tale. They also say they hold hands like a dream, an abstract but very clearly loving sentiment, followed up by abstract physicality and watercolor like movements. In fairy tales, there is unreality of reality they zone in on like a picture. They don't differentiate between metaphorical dreams and nightmares as if they are used to nightmares, and they give the abstract physicality, saying the melody is ticklish. They really try to use as many senses as possible. They introduce a universe died by you, conveying an unnatural reality, though one created through choice. They refer to them touching, breaking things down to the most basic level of intimacy, but their heaven. They bring back the space motif as well as the clouds and flying, and they naturally integrate action and affection. Flying is like an art form, their action, hands overlapping, is part of the process of fleshing things out. Quirks like even the curves of lips can have a big effect, and it's hard to define their feelings in ways other than through art. They reflect on life at large through the pink horizon. They convey a common sentiment, intoxicating feelings, but they phrase it in a way both straightforward and artful. They sink into a deep rhythm, bringing in a kinesthetic sense in addition to those previous. They also say to stay like a mirage, but mirages stay if you don't get help to come back to reality. Maybe that's just what they want, fitting as they refer to a figurative eye opening. Moving on, double up is like the anti waiting for Godot, as the speaker and the subject go anywhere, celebrating what is familiar, including each other and references back to up. They convey a direct address, stating the obvious in a way that signifies it's abnormal, first in a subtextual sense, then as they go on. They're very concerned with the mundane and connections to others. There's an ability for things to become anew, relationships and norms not being shackles. They have to tremble to flutter and are not blinded by their own mentality. They keep repeating every, stuffing it all in the same line, very accessible. The to the places we want to go, beginning the second line, could be completing the sentence from the first or branching with the rest of the second. They provide breezy descriptions, emotionality explored openly, and going on a voyage rather than wasting days the same way. They combine parts of different sentences together, like the referenced imagination creates a literary montage. The world grows through them, symbiotic, healing for everyone involved. They turn to mentality as well as show up, each step emphasized rather than staying in place. They do not stop with feeling or with each other. They pose the question of if we are invoking the expansion of bad faith by not questioning and romanticizing quote unquote up. Doubling up is not enough energy like an expense. People become shells through all of this. Your feet taking you rather than you taking them, and something is clearly being lost, but the focus is up, beyond the mind. They go off in multiple ways, not needing to be in control. Control is achieved through rehearsal rather than directly, even feeling having stipulations. They're concerned with altering truth, which also has stipulations. They're taking a chance, but still showing, not telling, still growing dangerously. In Push Button, the speaker is basically a good god in control. They're like the emotions in Inside Out, knowing what they control with quote unquote buttons, without what they control knowing them. They aren't like the speaker in Glitch by Quantum MB and Abandoned God Abandoning. Instead, they play with psychic distance and ask the subject not to throw things away while engaging with their quote unquote love attack race, and they're a god who wants to be closer to people. They just oddly lack that specific power. This, like I was saying, seemingly being an apostrophe with the subject not hearing or being privy to this information. They have to find the subject's heart code like they do not have the power to take advantage of powers at their own disposal. They push buttons as a matter of routine more so than feeling truly enabled. Still, they have a lot of personality, being as mischievous as they are and having a genuine desire to fix problems. They have a spark to them, even if its development seems rather slow. They care about numbers in the context of how they relate back to the subject wanting a perfect fit. In problem, they immediately start to actively deny being the problem and end up losing the active part signified by losing the I. It might seem that there is something wrong with them, but they don't even question if they learned the way to live in good faith. They did, against all odds, through showing off their essence. And there's no underlying sense of self-doubt like someone might expect. Their confidence is obvious, asking, what if they're a bit unique, if they're a bit unique? They're not concerned about anything else in this situation because they see the good when they acknowledge the truth of themselves. And they also go on to say things like, I wanna, I can, and the currents of the world change with me, openly playing with things like the aforementioned loss and the ramifications of self perception. It seems very straightforward, but it allows for deeper lines of questioning than might even come to mind without the baseline understanding. And finally, I have a question you might not expect to come out of a song called Dear Diary. What is the role of appearances here? I believe I've brought up before that poetry is to some extent a visual art. I don't know that journaling necessarily is or is not as well, but the speaker in the song definitely wants you to know what their journal looks like, how the pages look, how the words take up the page. They also figuratively take off a mask, portraying themselves without filters and paint and draw. They talk about seemingly deep stories without getting into the depths themselves, making me ask if this is more about storytelling or the function of it. I still think this album caught me by surprise, and I still have a hard time pinpointing exactly why. We all had our expectations going into this era, and most of us were wrong, and this changes the game for project groups, obviously. But why does the album surprise me, besides it having a more consistent quality than some other comebacks? I mean, it's not like fans are being left with nothing with just disbandment. This album itself played a role in people trying to take apart and dissect our relationships with Kepler before and, of course, now after the end of their original contract. I don't usually see an outpouring of love for this group, and I think bittersweet might be the word that best conveys my personal feelings. I like words, but sometimes I still don't know which ones I need. I don't think I can truly sum up my feelings yet, having been a longtime fan, even if I know I wasn't the biggest one by any means. I guess I can just recommend listening to this album, but also Together Forever because it's one of my favorite songs of all time, and it seems like not a lot of people know it. It goes without saying that I hope Mashiro and Yeseo know they're loved, but I hope they all do now more than ever. Bye.